Acid reflux and atrial fibrillation, a new study confirms the link. If you're somebody who suffers from acid reflux or hiatal hernia, and you also suffer from heart palpitations or atrial fibrillation, you're going to find this very fascinating. What the study found was that people who suffer from acid reflux are more likely to suffer from atrial fibrillation, and when they compared two different groups, so those without acid reflux but still had underlying factors that could cause atrial fibrillation versus that same type of group of people that also had the reflux. So the reflux was moving them more in the direction of heart palpitations and atrial fibrillation. Now, of course, when it comes to atrial fibrillation, the first thing you always want to do is seek out a cardiologist, get yourself checked, because it's something that can cause stroke, it can cause early death, so it's not something to fool around with until you really know what's happening. But if you're not somebody who has the classic cardiac profile, you don't have coronary artery disease, and that's what we see here in the clinic. We've definitely seen in our many decades of treating hiatal hernia syndrome and acid reflux and working with gut health, we've seen people whose atrial fibrillation was handled with treating their hiatal hernia and their acid reflux. But this is a 2025 study. So we've been doing this for 40 years and we've seen the correlation, but now there's a brand new study showing it. So I always like to, let you know when the science corroborates what we've seen, because it's not something to take lightly. Okay, anything with the heart, it's our number one killer, not something to take lightly. But as I said, we frequently see patients who they've been the route to the cardiologist, and their heart is definitely giving them symptoms, but there is no underlying heart disease. So I want to say that right off the bat. So let's find out what it is. Since it's not underlying heart disease, what's going on? So the first has to do with the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is your longest cranial nerve. It innervates, meaning it causes to function your heart, your stomach, and your esophagus. So that little trio that's very close anatomically, they're all told to work by the vagus nerve. So when you have acid reflux, you have hiatal hernia, the vagus nerve gets irritated. When the esophagus is traveling down your chest, and of course it connects your mouth to your stomach, but its root is paralleled by the vagus nerve. They go down that route together. So when you have acid reflux, or you have the pressure of the hiatal hernia, the stomach pushing on the esophagus, that irritates the vagus nerve. And that irritation can therefore create irritation on the heart. And it's called vagally mediated atrial fibrillation. So instead of being heart disease mediated, this is mediated by the vagus nerve because of the irritation on the stomach and the esophagus. So what's different about vagally mediated atrial fibrillation is the patient tends to notice when I was overly full, my heart started acting up. I was full and I bent over and it did it. I went to lie down with a full stomach. I was having a lot of acid reflux and my heart seemed to react to that. And unfortunately, in our system of very siloed medicine, the cardiologist is not speaking to the gastroenterologist. They're not communicating with one another. And we've definitely met a lot of patients who they've made this correlation. When you suffer long enough, you start to make connections. It's your body. You're starting to understand it and go, I don't know, it really seems to be related to my digestion, but more often than not, patients are told they have nothing to do with one another. So this study refutes that. And let's see, I wanted to also go into the second issue of how this happens. So one, we have a nervous system issue, the vagus nerve, which we just explained. The other thing has to do with inflammation. So when the esophagus is inflamed due to acid reflux or bile reflux, so it could be bile coming up from your gallbladder, that irritation creates chemicals that go out into your bloodstream, and what they can do is they can alter heart function and create electrical instability. So the connection of how the body is integrated, it's always quite fascinating. And you say, oh, acid reflux, okay, I'm feeling some reflux in my, through my stomach into my esophagus. I have heartburn. It's called heartburn for a reason. Not only where it's located in your chest, but there is that strong connection. So you get that inflammation due to the acid or bile really irritating the esophagus, and it's called a gastro, meaning stomach, or esophageal cardiac reflex, and knowing of this association and how tightly they're intermingled. But it's quite fascinating that the inflammation created then goes out systemically and can alter the electrical functioning of your heart. So now that we know it's a real thing, and we know it can be vagus nerve stimulated or inflammatory stimulated, what the researchers said was that GERD management, in other words, managing your reflux disease, can really be a part of preventing and managing atrial fibrillation. So they did make that correlation, which is great. And also they said it could, modify your risk factor. So you can modify your risk factor getting atrial fibrillation by getting your reflux and your hiatal hernia under control. So how do we do that? We here do that by getting to the root cause of what's causing the acid reflux to occur, or the bile reflux. So both liquids can reflux up into your esophagus. And it has a lot to do with pressure gradients in your digestive tract, because everything should go from the mouth. You chew your food and then it flows down, and there's a little valve in your esophagus that opens when food is coming. There's an upper one and a lower one, and the upper and lower both, they sense food or drink is coming, they open, it passes through, they close, and they close with a downward pressure, because everything is trying to move everything through your gut, right, through your intestinal tract. Nothing is supposed to go back the other way. So when you're looking at what's causing this, it's called intra-abdominal pressure, increased intra-abdominal pressure. So within the abdomen, you've got pressure on your stomach that is squeezing the stomach and causing the contents of the stomach, which is acid, to go up your esophagus. So there are medications you can take to lower the acid content in your stomach, but it's not an excess acid problem. It's a squeezing, it's a pressure on your stomach problem. So reducing the intensity of acid in your stomach actually can create cardiac problems, put you more at risk for stroke and heart disease. Factually, it's one of the many side effects of PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, so you should know that. So instead of drugging it, we want to get to the root cause of why, because your stomach is supposed to be a bag of acid, and that's what we do. We isolate where these pressures are coming from. And to give you some ideas of what can cause it, it's anything from something you're eating. You have a poor diet, a highly processed diet. You have some food sensitivities you're eating, and those can be healthy for you foods, but they're just not suiting your gastrointestinal tract. You can have imbalances of what's called your microbiome, the 60 to 100 trillion organisms in your gut. You can have more bad guys than good guys, and the bad guys create inflammation, they create that extra pressure, and toxins can do it. So it's not a list of 100 items long, it's more like 5, but we have to determine in each person what the root cause is. And not only do you then handle your acid reflux, you take pressure off your heart, which is a beautiful thing, and you optimize your gut function, which really serves you well, because your GI tract has so much to do with your overall health, in addition to salvaging your heart function. So I hope that makes sense, and if this was valuable to you, please like and subscribe to the channel, and consider sending me a comment. I love your comments. I answer pretty much every one that I get, and we'll talk soon.